very soon. Security department is more deputy president, dean of information science, dean of liberal arts, dean of graduate school, dean of law school, dean of business school.
Sawadika. Good afternoon, Chairman of the International Peace Foundation, former Ambassador to Austria, President of Southeast Asia University, and all distinguished guests. Southeast Asia University, in collaboration with the International Peace Foundation and the Education Society of Thailand, are honored to host the event series, Bridges, Dialogues Towards a Culture of Peace, primarily to establish creative conflict resolution programs for the growing threats of war and international terrorism. In this very particular event, it is a special privilege to have the keynote speaker from Liechtenstein to deliver his speech on conflict resolution in the modern world. At this moment, I would like to call upon the Chairman of the International Peace Foundation for the opening address. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Uwe Morawetz.
Sawadika, แขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่าน As a contribution to the decade for a culture of peace and non-violence, initiated and promoted by the United Nations General Assembly in the year 2000, Thailand has now been chosen as the host country for the event series Bridges, Dialogues Towards a Culture of Peace, and initiated by the International Peace Foundation, a non-political independent foundation under the common patronage of 21 Nobel Peace Prize laureates based in Vienna. Thailand has been chosen for the following reasons. The Thai nation and its people, with their self-confidence, open-mindedness, and tolerance, could provide a creative pathway towards peace. Under the wisdom and spiritual leadership of His Majesty the King, as the shining example for inner and outer peace, the democratic Thailand has the ability to promote peace and the potential to stabilize the region. It has a rich, diversified network of national and international organizations, including business, diplomatic corps, media, and NGOs, which provide the ground for an enhanced intercultural dialogue. Bridges, Dialogues Towards a Culture of Peace, will be continued today with the keynote speech of His Serene Highness, Prince Alfred of Liechtenstein, who will address the topic conflict resolution in the modern world. The series of 250 lectures and dialogues, seminars, workshops, and artistic performances, which started in November 2003, will then be further continued in Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, Chonburi, Kanchanaburi, Khon Kaen, and Nakhon Ratchasima until April 2005. During a one-year period of time, 27 Nobel laureates for peace, physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and economics, as well as decision makers in international politics, economy, science, culture, and the media, are joining hands with Thai leaders in all parts of society to promote the kingdom as a center for dialogue and international understanding. The multidisciplinary and pluralistic approach of the events program reflects that peace involves all parts of society. It involves awareness and social responsibility of politicians, the business community, scientists, artists, and the media. And since peace within ourselves, our families, and our environment starts in our minds and hearts, it involves every one of us. ผมรู้สึกซาบซึ้งที่คนไทยสนับสนุนและร่วมมือกันให้โครงการสร้างสัมพันธ์สู่สันติวัฒนธรรมได้เกิดขึ้นจริงๆซึ่งโครงการนี้ได้รับแรงบันดาลใจจากการได้เห็นพระบาทสมเด็จพระเจ้าอยู่หัวทรงงานหนักเพื่อสันติภาพและความมั่งคั่งของประสบนิกรรวมทั้งรักษาวัฒนธรรมขนบประเพณีอันงดงามและฉลองไว้ซึ่งศาสนาในโอกาสนี้ผมขอขอบคุณเจ้าชายอัลเฟรดแห่งประเทศลิชเทนสไตน์ปาฐกและศิลปินทุกท่านที่ได้เดินทางมาร่วมและสนับสนุนกิจกรรมโดยไม่รับค่าดอกเบี้ยใดๆและผมขอขอบคุณผู้ให้การสนับสนุนและพันธมิตรที่ได้ให้ความร่วมมืออย่างดียิ่งวันนี้ผมขอต้อนรับผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านเข้าสู่สันติวัฒนธรรมโดยการสานเสวนาความเข้าใจและความเคารพซึ่งกันและกันร่วมกันในงานครั้งนี้และต่อไปขอบคุณครับ
Thank you very much, Mr. Uwe Morawetz. Your spoken Thai is very impressive indeed. And next is our distinguished president. Ladies and gentlemen, Associate Professor Dr. Narong Sinsuan.
His Serene Highness Prince Alfred and Her Serene Highness Princess Rafaela of Liechtenstein. It is a great pleasure and a great privilege for Southeast Asia University to have Your Highness as distinguished guest to our campus today. I would like to invite all of us here in the auditorium to give a big warm welcome applause to the Prince and Princess from Liechtenstein. Our warm welcome is also to Mr. Uwe Morawetz, the chairman of the International Peace Foundation in Thailand. Also, Dr. Somkiat Ariya Pratchaya, the former Thai ambassador to Austria. Our warm welcome also extended to all the guests who come to our university today. It is a great opportunity for our university and for the students to get the chance to listen to the speech by His Serene Highness, who not only have worked in connection with peace, but also have education and background in political science. He has worked, as Mr. Morawetz has said, for the sake of peace for quite some time. Peace is the most important thing for human beings. And when the Peace Foundation offered me to select many topics, for example, on economics or in medical science, I choose the topic that concerning peace, because I think peace is the most important for the survival of mankind. And today, I think we're going to get knowledge, learn many things from the speech of His Serene Highness, Prince Alfred of Liechtenstein. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President. May I now call upon the former ambassador to Austria to contribute a special note on the cultural background of Austria and Liechtenstein. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Somkiat Arya Prachya.
Your Serene Highness, Prince Alfred, Chairman of the Advisory Board of the International Peace Foundations. Your Serene Highness, Rafaela of Liechtenstein. Dr. Narom Simsawat, Director of the Southeast Asia University. Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the International Peace Foundations. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to say how pleased I am to be here, and I would like to join my former speakers, in particular my good friend and director, Dr. Narom, to welcome Your Serene Highness and Your Serene Highness to the Princess to Thailand. I hope you have a good stay here, and of course on Sunday we have an election. This is a great experiment in democracy. This is one of the ways that we call conflict resolutions as well. So I hope you have the chance to witness important moment in our history. Dr. Narom had asked me to say a few words about Liechtenstein, a country in Europe which I had visited not too long ago. Why? Because I have been ambassador to many countries in Europe, to Poland, to the EU, to Brussels, Luxembourg, and also recently Austria, and have been to your country. So not so many people hear about Liechtenstein. So to put your speech in perspective, he asked me to say a few words. But I will not take a long time because I know all of us here are eagerly awaiting to hear Your Serene Highness talking about conflict resolution. So I will be very brief. I can take only a few minutes, and I will say only 3 points. First point, Liechtenstein is a constitutional monarchy based on parliamentary democracy. Liechtenstein is a very interesting country, as it is a country which, like other countries in Europe, knows the scourges of war very well. As you know, in the past, Europe had been theaters for many disastrous conflicts and wars. World War I, World War II, and not long ago, the Balkan Wars, just to cite a few. And their catastrophe were enormous in terms of human sufferings and material damages. The European community, which is now known as the European Union, was born out of the desire of Europeans not to allow war to occur again in Europe. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, or OSCE, which is based in Vienna, is also another effort of Europeans to solve possible conflicts by preventive diplomacy and outreach activities to coordinate among cultures, to, in a way, not to have what we call the clashes of civilizations. For your information, Thailand is a partner for cooperation with OSCE, where we regularly hold exchanges of view and experience on confidence-building measures. As ambassador of Thailand in Austria, I used to attend many OSCE meetings and exchange views with them on how to solve conflicts around the world, and also how to have outreach activity to talk about cultures, elections, what are the best practices, that sort of thing. So this is a lot of experience, from Europe. As Europe is one of the major players, both economically and politically, its views, opinion, and experiences regarding the appropriate policy and ways to resolve conflict is very important to world peace. Therefore, His Serene Highness' speech today should be most useful for Asia, as Asia has also a few flat points that could turn into major conflicts if they are not handled well. Second point, something about Liechtenstein for you. Liechtenstein, though small in size and in population, only about 160 square kilometers, with just about 35,000 people, is a very developed country. It has very high per capita income, about $25,000 US. Thanks to its strategic locations near Austria, hence the European Union, very big market, of so many millions, 400 or 500 millions on the east, and Switzerland on the west. And also its industrious people. Its integration with Switzerland in the custom and monetary union, and also its low taxes, quite low. Liechtenstein has, through the years, developed into a peaceful, prosperous, free market economy with a very vibrant financial sector. Third point, Liechtenstein is a very beautiful country with Austria on the east and Switzerland on the west. Its postcard light I see, because I have been there. Mountainous landscape is very similar to that of Switzerland and Austria. Facilities for tourists are superb. Therefore, one should not miss the opportunity to visit Liechtenstein, in particular Vaduz, its capital. In case you don't have much time or time constraint, you may get a glimpse of Liechtenstein to a visit to the recently opened Palace of Liechtenstein Museum in Vienna, which I went there at the inauguration ceremony. Beautiful paintings of art by masters. So I think all of you would concur with me that we are very happy to have Your Serene Highness with us to give us the speech, which is very timely and very important. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณมากนะครับ
Thank you very much, Dr. Somkiat, for your contribution. And so, we are all convinced that Liechtenstein is a very nice place to visit. Now, we are proudly introducing our distinguished keynote speaker today. He is the chairman of the advisory board of the International Peace Foundation in Vienna. He received his master's degree in computer science and economics at the University of Vienna, where he also studied political science, systems theory, cybernetics, biology, philosophy, and artificial intelligence. Since 1976, he has been chairman, CEO, and board member in several companies in the fields of engineering, investment, trading, banking, and consulting. He is also actively involved in various nonprofit organizations, among others, as the president and co-founder of the Vienna Academy for the Study of the Future, chairman of the Society of Fathers of the International Peace Foundation, board member of Search for Common Ground, member of the Honorary Board of UN Global Youth Forum, member of the International Academy of Science, and fellow of the World Academy of Art and Science. He published 2 books, Management by Evolution and Internet, the Public and Democracy. And he also received the International Albert Schweitzer Humanitarian Award in 1990 in New York. More importantly, he is married to a very beautiful lady, Her Serene Highness Princess Alfred of Liechtenstein. And she is here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to His Serene Highness Prince Alfred of Liechtenstein.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to Your Excellency and to the Rector and all the staff members and professors of the university. It's a great pleasure for me to be here this afternoon together with you. My topic for today is conflict resolution in the modern world. So what I will do and what I have discussed with your rector is that I will just give you a brief outline of what I could speak and about what we could discuss, so that we have much time for answers and questions, because conflict resolution is all about dialogue. So I'm most interested to enter into a dialogue and to use this format then to go deeper into certain issues which are raised by you. If I speak about conflict resolution in the modern world, I follow the structure of His Excellency the Ambassador. I speak also about 3 parts. Good format. So the first part would be that we speak about the modern world. What are the main features of our modern world? First, I think it's the rise of the concept of the individual. You know, in the Middle Ages, before the Age of Enlightenment in Europe, we also had a traditional society comparable to many other cultures around the world. But then something happened in history, and this is that the concept of the individual suddenly came up and appeared in history, and this was in Europe. From then on, traditional societies have been transformed tremendously, and still on a global scale we see that this is going on today. What do I mean with this? That in pre-individual societies, the collective was the main interest and the main focus of the society. And now everything is changing, and young people around the world are very much attracted by this new way of life, by the American way of life, by the Western values, because through mass media, through pop culture, and through what is called today globalization, you see that the value of the individual has risen besides or vis-a-vis the value of the collective. So this is one of the features of the modern world. Another one I touched already, this is what we call globalization, and we can talk about this. Globalization, as I understand it, is mainly the expansion of the American form of capitalism to the whole world. This has a lot of beneficial aspects, but it also has a lot of problematic aspects. And one of these feature and problematic aspect is the loss of identity in many, many ways to many people around the world. Just yesterday, in one of the English-speaking newspapers in Thailand, I read the publication of a major study, a research study done here in Thailand about new lifestyles and what are the changes in Thai society. And so the headlines in this newspaper article was "Sex and the City," following this American sitcom which has the same title. And what was expressed there as a summary of this study was that lifestyles are changing very much also in Thailand, and basically the people in the urban centers of Thailand, they are following, so to speak, the philosophy of this television sitcom Sex and the City. Now, this raises, of course, the question about identity. So, if we enter into a dialogue, we can speak about Thai identity. What does it mean to be a Thai in a global world? What does it mean to have an individual, to have a cultural identity? And looking at this study, I would raise the question, do you want to become in the future like Americans or like Europeans? Do you want to change your lifestyle? Do you want to change your way of living? Or is there a way to remain Thai if you wish to keep this identity and yet be a participant in the modern world? So this is another field about which we can discuss. The third one in this part one is that we speak about human rights and democracy and the system of democracy and what is called the debate of a new world order today. As you know, this is a major conflict since the preparation to this last war in Iraq, that conflicts did arise between the United States on the one side and practically the rest of the world on the other side, about how we would like to see that our world will be organized. This was the notion of the New World Order. And Europeans, also China, also Soviet Union or Russia today, and many other countries, they feel that we have to organize ourselves on a global level as a multilateral society, so that we share, that we enter into dialogue, that we make our decisions together, and that there is not one dominant factor which is the only superpower who then can decide in which way our future will be shaped. So this is human rights, democracy, the system of democracy. Then there's something else, and this is the end of this first part. You know that the United Nations in the year 2000 proclaimed a decade for a culture of peace and non-violence. And within this decade, our foundation, Mr. Uwe Morawetz, and all our activities are embedded. So we are now in the third year of the decade, of the UN decade for a culture of peace and non-violence. But unfortunately, as we all know, this decade did not start in a very peaceful manner. So we have another 7 years to fulfill the goals of this decade, and this was a very ambitious goal, because all the members of the United Nations, that means almost 200 countries, did decide on the top level, that means on the head of state or head of government level, that within 10 years, within this decade, we will make the transition from a culture of war to a culture of peace. So I speak about a culture of peace, of non-violence and love. And now I come to a subject which I'm sure that all of you are very interested in, and this is the subject of love. Usually this is not part of political science. This is unfortunately not part of any kind of science. Also, it's one of the most interesting subjects, particularly for young people. So, what do I mean if I say we have to establish a culture of love? It's very simple. There are two conditions that love can happen. The first condition is that I accept fully somebody else. Of course, I have to accept myself, but I accept another being. And second, I want to make this subject of my love happy. These are the two conditions. So, full acceptance. We can speak about conditional love and unconditional love. But unconditional love means that if I meet somebody, then I accept you, I embrace you for what you are. I don't put any conditions, I just say you are great. I accept you. I know you have weaknesses, I know you have strengths, and so on, but I accept you for who you are. And second, I want to make you happy. And if these two conditions are met, then love can appear. Before I define love, I want to briefly define coexistence. What means coexistence? Coexistence means that we live together, that we cooperate, that we interact with each other, despite the fact that we are different and despite the fact that we might have certain disagreements in particular points. So, despite the fact of differences, despite the fact of possible and potential disagreements, we are working together, we are cooperating, we are living together. This is coexistence. And love means an intense state of joyful living in coexistence. I repeat it and summarize it. So, we need to accept each other, we need to make each other, we need to have the wish to make each other happy, and then we are operating in a state called love. This you can apply to your private relationships. You can test it, whether these conditions are necessary and sufficient that love appears, but we can also apply it on a global scale. And therefore, we speak about a culture of peace and love, because this means nothing else than that we just make a new social contract. Yeah? Each of us, with each of the other person here, we could sign a little agreement, a little paper, which we call a social contract. And in this social contract we have just 2 or 3 lines, 2 or 3 paragraphs. The first one is that we accept each other as we are. Second, that we want to make each other happy. And third, that we are operating in the state called love. Yeah? That means nothing else than to accept each other and make each other happy. And if we all would make such an agreement, if we would write something like a new social contract, then we can achieve a peaceful world. It is so simple. The second part about what we could talk and should talk probably is understanding conflict. What are conflicts? Ladies and gentlemen, conflicts arises out of disputes. So a dispute is something which happens many, many times every day. A dispute is a disagreement between two people, between two groups of people about a certain issue. Usually what we call a disagreement of this type, a dispute, you can solve very easy if we would be rational beings. Because a dispute is a pragmatic disagreement, and we can do some research, and then usually we find an answer, who is right, who is wrong, and that's it. So this is a dispute. But since we, human beings, unfortunately are not rational beings alone, we are also emotional beings. Therefore, under the layer of the dispute is a deeper layer, which is an emotional layer. So, most of the disputes then get fueled by an emotional layer. And this shifts then the emphasis of the dispute from the original issue, where we started in a dispute, and then we suddenly enter gradually into a confrontation between two emotional personalities. And we kind of almost forget from where we started, because now we start to fight on an emotional level. So this is a next layer. And under this, of course, you have it's like a rainbow, you have many layers, but I just point out the three major layers. So there's another deeper layer, which we call a deep-rooted conflict. And a deep-rooted conflict, most of the deep-rooted conflicts are cross-cultural conflicts. That means now we are not only emotional, but we speak about the layer of our cultural and personal identity. So if we start to enter into this type of conflict, we deny each other's identity usually. And this creates tremendous fear, and this can create a lot of aggression, and therefore these deep-rooted conflicts, the cross-cultural conflicts, and all kinds of deep-rooted conflicts very often erupt in violence and in mutual annihilation, or the wish to annihilate each other. So we have to understand the nature of conflict and the process of conflict, and then we can go to the third part, and this is managing conflict, or conflict resolution. You will find a lot of literature. Probably you have, within political science or other studies, you have looked already into this, but there are many, many techniques to manage conflict or to resolve conflict. Once we understand the nature of conflict and we know the techniques and the tools to resolve conflict, we don't feel so helpless, because then we say, well, there are many ways to handle conflicts, but the main way is that we have to find the instruments to settle disputes and conflicts in a non-violent manner. And all these tools are just there for this purpose. And this is the third part about which we could talk, and I would conclude now my introductory remarks, because I think you also have some material which was previously sent to you, and the rector told me it was distributed. So, you know, basically in a much more detailed manner what I have written in this background material. And so I would invite you now that we start to enter into a dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Highness, for your contribution. After all, love, especially unconditional one, is what we all need regardless of our differences and even disagreement in beliefs, values, races, religions, and so on. And we need to recognize and respect one another. Without this, it's not easy to live a peaceful coexistence. And this juncture, the floor is open for questions. If you have any questions, please come forward to the microphone provided in the aisles. And Prince Alfred will answer the questions.
Good afternoon, Your Highness. My name is Charlie. I'm a business English student here, and my question is, in what way would you like to organize our future world? Thank you.
As I said, this is very complex and difficult question which you raised, but thank you very much. This is what I briefly touched as the issue of a new world order. You see, if we look at the world today, we see that conflicts are on the rise everywhere. I did speak about the rise of the individual, and I can say that individuality and conflict are the two sides of the same coin. So our way to express ourselves individually and to pursue our interests meet the interests of the other individual who pursue his or her own interest. And therefore, in pursuing our individual interests, it comes to a clash of interests. And this happens on the individual level as well as on the level of societies, cultures, and states. So what we can say, the main feature in regard also to the prevention of conflicts is that there is no other way than to enter into this way to handle conflict, which we call love. And the precondition for this is that we start to speak to each other, that we enter into a dialogue. So the resort to force, the resort to violence to settle conflict, this is the wrong way. It's the wrong way in many ways. It's economically the wrong way because we can bring many different examples throughout history that it's much more expensive to lead a war than to prevent the conflict in ways of negotiations. So the main feature of this new world order has to be that we are willing to understand each other, that we are willing to listen to each other, that we are willing to learn more about different cultures and from where we come and how we see the world. So it's the willingness to understand, it's the willingness to enter into a respectful dialogue, and it means also that we need some institutions which assist us in entering into respectful dialogue and in working out a system which is in the interest of the whole of humanity and not only in the interest of a few countries or a few nations. I indicated before that this form of organizing the world we call a multilateral organization. That means in applying or listening to the old saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, it is not wise to have only one dominant force in the world. And this means the unilateral view, which is currently pursued by the United States, but the multilateral view is that it's better that we join in consensus, that we form councils, that we enter into dialogue to decide in a democratic manner how we want to shape our societies. These are the basic features for such a world order, such a culture of peace and non-violence.
Okay, so to answer that question, we have to be willing to understand each other and also respect each other. Okay, next question.
Good afternoon, Prince Alfred. I'm I'm studying business English at this university. My question is that most people I see in the world seem to give and receive conditional love. And how can we change conditional love to unconditional love?
Thank you very much for this question. It's of course also one of the most difficult things. You know, this is also linked with what is called wisdom. It's the nature probably of human beings that we are not necessarily born and prepared to act unconditionally. But especially since you are studying business and management, you know that the whole economy is based on condition. Yeah? You say, I see that you are in need, I can provide you with what you need, but my condition is that you pay this and that price to me. Yeah? Otherwise I block you from getting what you need. So this is the way our world basically works. So on the one side, human beings are conditional beings because we are conditioned by our culture, we are conditioned by our education, our whole behavioral patterns. All this is directed in a way that we only act if our conditions are met. But there's another side to us human beings, and this is that inside ourselves, if we take the time to look briefly in our heart, we feel that there's a desire for love. There's a desire of being accepted for who you are. There's a desire and there's a dream maybe to live in a world full of harmony and of love. And so we human beings have both of these sides. And basically what religion and what spiritual approaches, what spiritual traditions are offering us, this is a way to change our personality, to clean our personality, if you want, in such a way that we become able to love unconditionally. But of course it's a long way, and as people say, actually it's the longest journey you can make in your life, yeah? The longest journey you can make in your life is from here, from the rational mind, to here, to the heart full of compassion. This is the longest trip, the longest journey in your life, because it takes you the whole life. In most cases, even at the end of the life, you might have not yet arrived here, from here. Now, the problem of our educational system is this, that we are trained only on this rational level. We are trained only on the intellectual level. But we don't get a training in our schools, in our universities, to open the heart, to get more intuitive, to become more sensitive to the needs and necessities of the others. And so, unfortunately, we are in a situation that we have to do this kind of education for ourselves. But as I said, I mean, we have all the desire to enter into such a state, to find love in this world, but then we have to also give love, and we just have to work it out with ourselves, basically, that we enter more and more into something which we can call a state of unconditional love. Thank you.
So we all need wisdom that can derive from religion, because religion is a way to shape our life, right? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Excellency, Prince Alfred, may I have a really short question? What is the best way of the conflict resolution strategy of winning and losing today?
Well, there are basic strategies for conflict resolution. And we have basically, this comes from game theory, operational research, game theory. So we have 3 strategies. The most common strategy of conflict, of handling a conflict, is what is called win-lose strategy. That means this is mathematically expressed a zero-sum game. Yeah, that means either I win and then you lose, or you win and I lose. So sports, for instance, soccer games and all these are win-lose strategies. One winner, and the winner wins on the cost of the loser. We have another strategy, which you can call lose-lose strategy. This is usually happening in the conflict resolution or in managing conflict when a third party steps into a conflict. A third party with authority, either with moral authority or with political or military power. In other words, in many conflicts today, we see, let's say, President Clinton invites the Israeli side and the Palestinian side to Camp David, and he says, now we sit, the 3 of us, the leaders of these 3 countries or communities, we sit together, but I make clear from the beginning, because I'm the President of the United States, that within 4 days we come to a solution. And I will sit as long as the 2 of you conflicting parties and press you. I give you incentives, economic aid, for instance, but also I will threaten you that if you don't come to a solution, then you will face certain consequences. This is a lose, or let's say, because we are here in a university, so if 2 students are in a conflict, then the teacher or professor or the rector might call the 2 students in the office and say, hey, I mean, I want now that you settle your dispute right now here. Yeah? So this is lose-lose usually, because both conflicting parties not necessarily want to settle or are prepared to settle the conflict. Therefore, a third power forces them, or seduces them, but in most cases forces them, and then both parties are losing, in their perspective, something when when they resolve the conflict. And then we have a third strategy, and this is win-win. And this means that, again, in a mathematical game theory, we can prove that in many cases of conflicts, we can find a solution where both parties of the conflict are better off after the resolution than they have been before. And so both gained something, both gained what they were most interested, and this is called a win-win strategy. So these are the three basic strategies, and it becomes clear from what I said that the main strategy should be win-win. This is something which achieves a lasting resolution of a conflict, and from there probably peace may appear.
Thank you very much.
So there are three basic strategies to resolve conflicts. The first one is win-lose. For this one, either you win or I lose, either way. And the second one is lose-lose. No one wins, basically. And the last one is win-win, which is the best strategy because everyone has a better deals, so they can negotiate effectively. Because of time consuming, we will take one more question.